Shabbat Shalom. Right, so we're all familiar, I presume, with the beloved game of Jewish geography, right? Where you meet another Jew and you try and figure out who you both know, right? And a sociologist of religion, you may have heard me say this, sociologist of religion once enunciated to me the following rule. She said, any two Jews in the world know a third Jew in common. Okay, and I personally have never yet seen that fail. Now, having said that, I'm a rabbi, right? So chances are that the third Jew in common that we both know is that person's rabbi, right? So if you're not a rabbi, you might find it a little bit harder, but I would encourage you, right? Start playing this game, okay? Every time you meet another Jew, try and figure out who you both know in common, okay? But sometimes you really can't, or like, yeah, we both know so and so, but I have this feeling that we've met before, right? But I can't figure out where, right? And apparently, back in the 1980s, there was a guy in Jerusalem who had a cheesecake store. Okay, and he must have been a really, really, really good looking guy because people constantly mistook me for him. All the time. Okay, and to the point where I don't know if the name Anat Hoffman means anything to you. Some of you may have even had some encounter with her. She's one of the leaders of Women of the Wall, and she was for a while the deputy mayor of Jerusalem. But I ran into her on a bus in Jerusalem one day, and she like picked up where our previous conversation had left off. Okay, except that previous conversation was actually with the cheesecake store guy. Must have been, because it wasn't with, and she got so angry with me. So, but if you live in an observant community, right, and you like, I know you, right? We've met before, but I can't figure out where. You might say, I remember you from Sinai, right? I remember you from Sinai, okay? What does that mean? Okay, so that comes from the very beginning of this Parsha, right? You are standing this day, all of you, before the Lord. Not only with he who stands with us today do I make this covenant, but also with he who is not standing with us today. Right? And the late Rabbi Professor Neil Gilman from JTS wrote, I am perpetually astounded by this claim. Moses is clearly not referring to those who were living but not present at that very moment. He can only be referring to all the descendants of that community to the end of time. The verse really means what it says. All of Israel throughout history is bound by God's covenant with our ancestors centuries ago, right? And, Jewish American language, right? I mean, you will very often find the same person saying these two incorrect things about the word mitzvah. right? They will first will say, oh, yes, bar mitzvah means son of the command. Okay. Explain to me what son of the command is, right? But the same person who insists that bar mitzvah means son of the commandment in a different conversation will insist to you that the word mitzvah means good deed, right? But they never say, oh, yes, bar mitzvah means son of the good deed, right? But mitzvah does not mean good deed, right? It means commandment, right? And why do we have to obey the mitzvot? And I'm not talking like you personally, whatever. I'm talking about classic Jewish teaching, classic Jewish theology, right? We have to obey the mitzvot. All right, there's different questions. Okay, so God willing, within a few days, our negotiations with the Ethiopian church are successfully concluded, right? And then comes a certain day, and they say, you guys gotta be out. And you say, why? Why then? Why would you be out? Well, because you signed a contract. You signed a contract. And so, okay, so I signed a contract. So what? I don't feel like observing. No, you have to because you agree, right? So we say to God, right, which we do all the time. Well, I don't feel like I don't feel like observing Shabbat, right? I don't feel like keeping kosher. I don't feel like putting on whatever it is. And God says, you have to. Why do I have to? Because you signed a contract, right? You signed a contract. Say, where? And God says, right at the beginning of Parashat Nitzavim, right? You say, well, that was my great grandparents. That wasn't me. No. Covenant is made with he who stands with us today and he who is not standing with us today, right? And you say, hey, but God, you gave us free will. And God says, certainly did. I gave you free will. But you don't understand what free will means, right? You think that free will means that you have the right to do whatever you want. It doesn't. It means you have the ability to do whatever you want, right? And arguing that the two are the same is like, and I don't know whether I just notice it more or whatever, but like I'm astounded at how fast people drive around, right? I mean, you're on 270, right? Where in theory, the speed limit is 55, right? And I'm going 60. And people zip, they got to go 85, 90 easily, right? And so imagine such a thing. They actually get pulled over by a cop, right? And the cop says, what are you doing? Driving 90 miles an hour when the speed limit is 55. And the guy says, my car is capable of going 90. Right? My car is capable of going 90. The fact that your car is capable of going 90 doesn't mean you're allowed to go 90. Right? What? you didn't want me to be able to go 90, you should have told Detroit or Yokohama or, not to make cars that can go 90 miles an hour. Right, but the fact that my car is safe, but that is exactly the argument that the overwhelming majority of American Jews make, right? I have free will. Free will does not mean you have the right to do whatever you want. It means you have the ability to do whatever you want. The right to do whatever you want is autonomy, and they are not the same thing, Michael.
Well, I was gonna say that the speed limit is a bad argument, because, with the speed limit, you could always, oppress your legislature to renegotiate the speed limit. Whereas if you have a couple of the argument or the covenant, coming up for negotiations.
Well, I don't know, I mean,
Montana doesn't have the speed limit. Or they don't have it.
all right, you say we can negotiate a contract and we can renegotiate the speed limit, right? You go to Annapolis or wherever, but the covenant has no, well, I don't know, I mean, we used to not count women in the minyan, and now we do, right? We used to not ordain women as rabbis and cantors, and now we do, right? We used to not ordain LGBT people, and now we do, right? We used to, not be allowed to eat cheese that doesn't have a hechsher, and now we are, right? And today, conservative rabbis are not allowed to officiate at a marriage between a Jew and a non-Jew. Within 10 years, they will, right, again, I'm not for or against I'm for all of them, except whatever, okay, but the point, it does change, right? It does change, and it does change actually based on something else in this Parashat, Lo B'Shamayim, right? Lo B'Shamayim, the Torah is not in heaven. Right, that in that sense, right, the written Torah is a static document, right, but the process of Torah is dynamic, right, and we could make, whatever, I mean, we obviously don't have uniformity in what Jews believe, right? And so, we say, well, we decided in 1985 that women could be rabbis, right? And our Orthodox brethren would say, we decided that you were wrong. So, all right, so let's go ask God. No, you can't, right? You can't. It wouldn't matter, right? Actually, Jacob had a better answer to that than I did. It wouldn't matter if you asked God, right? Because whichever side God came down on, the other side would say, Lo B'Shamayim, right? It's not in heaven, right? Ein mashpishim b'vatbol, right? We don't pay any attention to a heavenly, right? But so we have this idea of, right, and so the question is, right, so the overwhelming majority of American Jews do not really believe that the mitzvot are obligatory, right? Or at least, let's say, not the ritual mitzvot, right? Not the ritual mitzvot. They probably believe that, yes, be a mensch is obligatory, right? Although I came across a quote, a fairly recent quote by Rabbi Elliot Cosgrove of Park Avenue Synagogue, who's probably the the most prominent conservative pulpit rabbi in America since Rabbi David Wolpe retired. And Rabbi Cosgrove said in a sermon, the tragedy of our time is that to speak about the importance of Menschlichkeit could be perceived as a partisan political statement. Right? You disagree?
I'm not sure.
Okay, think about it. All right, give me your answer after shot.
Going back to what you said about the misuse of the word so and equating it to good enough. Isn't it possible, well, this part from my teaching, from my learnings, God created man as universal. With the idea that man would make the world a good place to live.
Right.
My word, but, okay. So if that's the case, then also adhering to the mitzvot, which are commandments, God would not command us, again, my opinion, God would not command us to do anything that would hurt the world.
Right.
So loosely, could we not still equate mitzvot to good deeds?
Yes, I mean, mitzvot are certainly good deeds in the sense that everything God commands us is good. Right, and nothing God commands us is bad, right? That would be absurd, but it's not wrong in the sense that the same sense that I will often point out, right? That it's not that translation is not wrong, but it's not right either, right? I said that about Nitzavim, right? Standing. Not wrong, but it's not right either, right? So, and if you want to say these both are good, yes. Okay, but the issue is, I believe, what?
It's not optional.
It's not optional, right? Here's what I believe, and I could be wrong. Okay, most American Jews do not believe that the ritual mitzvot are obligatory. Right? They do believe that helping the poor is obligatory, right? Working for a more just society is obligatory. You know, it used to be that everybody believed helping Israel is obligatory, right? Sadly, a lot of Jews don't believe that anymore. And again, I'm not talking about supporting every single thing that Israel does, right? I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about supporting Israelites who exist. And many Americans, right? But that's what I'm saying. In other words, we don't believe, in other words, how far that? I mean, I'm just remembering the conversation that I had with my 10th grade class in York, Pennsylvania. Right? And again, small congregation, I knew all of these kids well and their parents, right? And I said to them, just talking about theology, right? How many of you believe that the Torah was given by God at Mount Sinai? They all believe. Okay. So I said, you know, and there were 4 kids in the class. 3 of them actually came from kosher homes. Okay, but none of them observed Shabbat in any, I mean, yeah, some had candles and wine and challah Friday night, and then maybe went to shul, but would not, like, not go to a soccer game because of the shots or something, right? And I said to them, okay, so you believe that the Torah was given by God at Mount Sinai and therefore obligated, right? And the Torah says to keep Shabbat. I know that none of you keep Shabbat, right? If the Torah was given by God to Moses at Mount Sinai and tells us to observe Shabbat, why wouldn't we observe Shabbat? And they thought, I could see like the wheels spinning in their head, right? Like, we've had that experience many times, right? And finally, one of the kids said, well, that's God's opinion. Um, that's God's opinion, right? And that's fine, you know, but if it's God's opinion, shouldn't that carry a little bit of weight with us? Right? And it's like, you know, okay, but God is outvoted here 4-1. Right? The four of us say no, and God says yes, it's 4-1, right? That's not the way the system is supposed to work. And here, I mean, I'm gonna say two things. One, I still do not think that most American Jews believe that the mitzvot are obligatory. And I also believe that most American Jews have never thought about the question, right? And possibly because most American rabbis have never raised it, right? And the question has never been discussed or faced in their religious education, right? But so here's the question, and I know I tend to like go way long, so I'm gonna really try and prepare, okay? Why do we, right, as much as I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say nobody in this room is 100% fully observant, right, including me. Right? What is the basis on which we decide what we will observe or what we won't observe? Okay? And sometimes it's just individual predilection, but sometimes it's the community. The community becomes the source of obligation. Right, the community becomes the source of obligation. I will give you a good example, okay, and I will wrap this up, okay? Most Saturday nights, we have 3, 4, 5 people on Zoom. Right, and that is enough for me to say it's worth doing. I'm not gonna go and say, I'm not gonna do it, right? Because it's 5 minutes, right? And I can't go out before I'm done anyway, so it doesn't like really interfere with my life, right? But tonight, for short sight, we wanna have dominion. So, and I would say don't be there for 5 minutes, be there for 20 minutes, right? And it's a bigger ask, right? And I'm pretty sure that we will make it, right? And why? Because all of a sudden, people have had this religious revival, and this, davening Saturday night, that's really important. I now understand that this is the word of God, and I must do it. No. Right? Because people in my community who I love read. Right? People in my community who I love need me. And that's really what keeps us together, I believe, right? people in my community who I love or I tolerate, like, or I can't stand, but even they still have the good points, right, whatever, right? They need me, and I need them, right? And we need to be there for each other, okay? And Professor Arnie Eisen, Chancellor Emeritus of JPS, said that sort of obligation can be as strong as any other, and maybe even stronger because we feel it and we understand it and we believe it. And so, I don't know. So that's, we do feel obligated. We do, but not necessarily by God, right? But rather by our commitments to each other. Shabbat shalom.
Amen. Love you, Rabbi. Thank you so much. Yashar koach.
Ruth, yeah.